Your brain still thinks something is hunting you, and the strangest part, it is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. The problem is, it was built for a world that no longer exists. Here is what nobody tells you about the human mind. It was not designed for the life you are living. It was designed for a life most people on this planet have not lived for over 10,000 years. And the gap between what your brain expects and what your life actually is, that gap is the source of almost every low-level misery modern humans experience. Neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett has spent decades studying how the brain constructs emotional experience. Her conclusion is unsettling. Your brain is not a passive receiver of the world, it is a prediction machine. At every moment, it is making its best guess about what is about to happen and preparing your body to respond before the information even arrives. And its predictions are not based on your current life. They are based on every piece of data evolution ever collected, which means your brain is, right now, running threat detection software written 200,000 years ago. Think about what your ancestors needed that software to do. The African savanna is not a forgiving environment. A moment of inattention could mean death, not metaphorical death, not career death or social death, actual death from something with teeth. Your ancestors lived in groups of roughly 50 to 150 individuals. They knew every face, every alliance, every shifting loyalty, and they needed to monitor all of it constantly because exclusion from the group was not an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. You could not survive alone out there. So the brain evolved a vigilance system that never fully turns off. Psychologist Roy Baumeister demonstrated this with a concept he called terror management. The underlying anxiety that humans carry is not really about the specific thing they are anxious about. It is a baseline hum of existential alertness that the brain redirects onto whatever target is available. Your ancestors redirected it onto the lion in the grass. You redirect it onto your inbox. The mechanism is identical. Only the target has changed. And here is where it gets stranger. Your brain does not distinguish between a physical threat and a social one. When a colleague sends you a cold, clipped email, the same neural circuits fire as they would if you heard a branch snap in the dark. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, who identified the social group size your brain evolved to manage, found that social rejection activates the same pain pathways as physical injury. Not similar pathways, the same ones. Being left out of a group chat and being hit with a rock are, to your nervous system, roughly equivalent events. This is not a metaphor, this is your architecture. Your amygdala, the small almond-shaped region deep in your brain responsible for threat processing, cannot tell the difference between a predator and a bad review. It does not have the resolution for that kind of distinction. It receives a signal that says danger, and it responds with everything it has. Cortisol floods the bloodstream. Heart rate accelerates. Attention narrows. Digestion slows. Your body prepares to either fight or run, and then you sit there, in your chair, with nowhere to run, and the cortisol just lingers. This is why chronic stress is so physically destructive. It is not the stress itself that kills you, it is the mismatch. Your body mobilizes for a sprint and then never gets to sprint. The fuel burns dirty. The systems designed for short bursts of extreme demand get stuck in a low-grade version of that state for hours, days, years. Your ancestors felt fear. Then they ran. Then the fear dissolved because the threat was resolved one way or another. You feel fear. Then you sit in a meeting, and the fear has nowhere to go. Neuroscientist Robert Sapolsky studied this for decades, following baboons across the plains of East Africa. He found that the stress response, which is nearly identical across all primates, is perfectly calibrated for acute, physical danger. It is catastrophically mismatched for the slow, chronic social stressors of modern life. A baboon chased by a leopard is stressed for 3 minutes. A baboon low in the social hierarchy is stressed every single day. The second one dies younger, with more cardiovascular damage, with a weaker immune system. The stressor that kills you, Sapolsky found, is the one you cannot resolve. Sound familiar? Now think about what your brain does when there is no specific threat to focus on. It invents one. This is not a flaw. It is a feature, or at least it was. A brain that defaults to assuming safety in uncertain conditions gets eaten. A brain that defaults to assuming threat survives. Evolution did not optimize for your happiness, it optimized for your survival. And since your ancestors lived in an environment where threats were common and unpredictable, the brain's baseline setting is mild alertness, a low-frequency scan of the environment for anything that might be wrong. This is what psychologists call negativity bias. Your brain processes negative information more deeply, remembers it more accurately, and returns to it more frequently than positive information. A single critical comment lands harder than 5 compliments combined. You remember the one time someone was cold to you in the hallway more clearly than the 100 times they smiled. You check for danger more readily than you register safety. Because for most of human history, missing a threat cost you everything. Missing a kindness cost you nothing. And so the asymmetry built itself into your nervous system. This is why you ruminate. The ancient threat monitoring system has no off switch. It runs even when you sleep. It runs in the background during pleasurable activities, waiting. Your brain would rather spend energy on an imaginary threat than risk being caught unprepared by a real one. Researcher Matthew Killingsworth at Harvard found that human beings spend 47% of their waking hours thinking about something other than what they are currently doing. And that mind-wandering, in the vast majority of cases, correlates with unhappiness. Not because thinking is bad, but because the default content of an unoccupied mind is threat assessment. What could go wrong? What already went wrong? What someone might think? What might happen if? Your brain on autopilot is your ancestors' brain scanning the horizon for smoke. But here is the part that changes everything. You are not your threat detection system. You are the part of you that can notice it running. The prefrontal cortex, the region that evolved most recently and most dramatically in humans, is capable of something almost no other species can do. It can observe its own processes. It can notice when the alarm is firing and ask whether the fire is real. It cannot silence the alarm. Not entirely, not immediately, but it can hold the alarm signal in awareness without treating it as a command. This is what every contemplative tradition, every therapeutic framework, every modern neuroscience-backed stress intervention has been pointing at for centuries. Not the elimination of the fear response, the development of a relationship with it. A way to hear the signal without being controlled by it. Your brain is going to keep scanning. It is going to keep finding edges in the fog that might be predators. It is going to keep replaying that conversation, rehearsing that confrontation, bracing for rejection that may never come. That is not a disorder. That is 200,000 years of survival compressed into 3 pounds of tissue behind your eyes. The question is not how to make it stop. The question is whether you can learn to let it run without mistaking it for reality. Tonight, when you feel that low hum, when your eyes drift to your phone even though you are not waiting for anything, when an ordinary moment gets a coating of unease you cannot explain, notice it. That is not you being anxious. That is your ancestor, somewhere deep inside the architecture, still scanning the tree line, still keeping watch, still doing everything it was designed to do, in a world that, for them, never got safe enough to stop.